Hey, everybody. We are so excited to be with you. We're going to call this week Judgment Week. And we often tease Tana that I'm here with the judge.
The jury and the executioner.
And the executioner. But do you know that judging other people in judging situations is actually a brain function? And there's a new study out on people who are radical politically, either to the left or to the right. And when they did cognitive testing, they found that the people who were most left and most right were cognitively rigid. What we want you to do is just think in your head where you are judgmental. And has that negatively impacted you in your life? Or have you felt, I certainly have, judged by others? I grew up with 5 sisters. And what kind of impact has that left on you in life?
I just want to ask you about what you said about political people being extremes, because I know many people, including myself, who were more extreme when they're younger, but become more moderate, middle of the road when they're older. Now, is that a brain function or is that life experience that makes that happen?
Well, it's always a combination of both. But when you're younger, your frontal lobes are less developed. They actually work harder, but they're less developed. And the most violent teenagers are actually the youngest teenagers. So in group members, it's sort of like a baby snake that, would you rather get bitten by an adult rattler or a baby rattler? And you'd rather get bitten by an adult rattler because they can control how much venom they put into you, but a baby can't control it because their nervous system is less developed.
Interesting.
And so the super judgmental among us often have frontal lobes that work too hard. So when I first started doing imaging, I found that people who were racist, their frontal lobes worked too hard. It was really interesting. So if things didn't go their way, they would become upset. And on the surface, it appears selfish. But really, when you look at it from a neuroscience standpoint, it's not so much selfish as it is rigid. And there's a big difference.
Okay, but we have to also look at the other side of this because...
Of course we do, because that's what we do.
because when you bring up things like racism, which has for so long been such an evil thing in our society, people have done evil things to people. That goes beyond being judgmental. There's something within you that thinks it's okay to hurt another person. Same thing we talk about. The one thing I will never not be judgmental about is pedophiles. I don't care what anybody says, they should die. So that's just not going to go away. But my point with the things like racism, things like being judgmental about someone's gender or their color of their skin, throughout history, people have done some pretty awful things to people. That goes beyond judgment. I mean, that digs deeper than that. And people do it even in groups. And so we have to talk about where judgment stops. And it's not just about you being judgmental. It goes into why you think you have the right to do something evil to someone else.
Well, it's that extreme way of thinking. And it's not all brain. So don't hear me say that, right? Those of you that listen to the Brain Warriors Way podcast know that Tana and I always talk in 4 circles, right? There's a biology, but nobody talks about the biology of racism. There's a psychology. How are you thinking about the other person? There's a social circle. Which tribe do you belong to? And if your tribe hates another tribe, and sometimes that happened out of survival.
Right.
If your tribe hates another tribe, well, if you don't hate them, then your own tribe might disown you, which is then potentially lethal for you, right? Humans are a group species because we survive better in a group. And then there's a spiritual circle, which is, well, why the heck do you care? And all sorts of atrocities have happened with biological problems, psychological problems, social problems, and spiritual problems. Many people have been killed in the name of God, of
Right.
whatever
you believe in.
Whatever you believe in. And so, but the point of Judgment Week is all of us judge. All
Everybody.
of us have been judged. And I just want you to just take a step back and think, I wonder how my brain was involved in that.
Yeah, even it's not always to the extreme of I'm racist against an entire group of people. It could be something, I mean, we all judge. That person's a jerk, right? You're judging them for something, and then it gets carried on. But we also, in the next podcast, maybe let's talk about why judgment with some things is good and can save you. We have to talk about both sides of this.
Well, absolutely. So what are you hearing? I'd love for you to post it in, any of your social media about judgment. Where have you been judged? Where have you judged others? Is it possible that there was actually a brain component to it? And sometimes the impulsive, stupid things people say, it's because they have low frontal lobe function. And I was actually talking to a professor last night about the difference between impulsivity and compulsivity. And people often mistake those. They often say they're impulsive when in fact they're not. So impulsive is I get a thought and I just say it without processing it. Or I get an idea to do something and I just do it without thinking about it. Compulsive is I get a thought and I have to say it. Or compulsive is I think I should do a behavior and then I have to do it. And they're often mistaken for each other. So let me just summarize. Judgment is in part a brain function. And if your brain is working right, you're much more likely to make rational judgments than it's not. If you find yourself far, far left or far, far right, that you just want to ask yourself, am I extreme in other areas of my life? And my experience is some people who are, they're not that tolerant at home. And if things don't go their way, they might have a tantrum or they may become hostile or negative toward their spouse, toward their child. And if you have been what you might think is overly judgmental, see if some of these symptoms may apply to you, that you tend to worry, hold grudges. If things don't go your way, you tend to get upset. You can be easily argumentative or oppositional. And my experience looking at scans is there's lower levels of serotonin. Serotonin is an inhibitory neurotransmitter, which means it calms things down. And sometimes that could help. So taking our brain type test, so know your brain type, brainhealthassessment.com. You can take it for free at brainhealthassessment.com. And, whenever you talk about your stepdad, I would just dearly love to have seen his brain.
Well, and I have no doubt that he had the biopsychosocial spiritual. We had all four things going on. He was very, very rigid politically. He was very racist. He was a bigot. And he just had that sort of, he grew up in a generation and a place where that was acceptable. And it was really hard to be around him a lot of the time. And, if anything, I'm somewhat grateful for it because it caused me, because he was so annoying with it, that it caused me to look outside of his belief system. I did not accept it because it was so annoying. And I'm glad for that. I'm actually grateful for that. I never thought it was correct.
So because you've been around people who have been like that, it actually, and so that would be a social modulation of the behavior.
Right.
And since it was
So
your
extreme.
stepdad, you didn't inherit the same genetic vulnerabilities that he had.
It just never made sense to me.
And so whenever you think about judgment, either you've been judgmental or other people have been judgmental to you, you always want to go, so what was going on in their brain? And what was going on in their mind? Or what in their connections? Or their sense of spirituality? All of this matters. So, we're so glad you're with us. We do a weekly drawing for a free book giveaway, and they come from those people that leave a review on iTunes or on Brain Warriors Way podcast.com. You can also ask questions to us every week. We're going to take some time and answer your questions. But you want a free Brain Warriors Way cookbook because Tana just did an awesome job. And I am so blessed to be married to this beautiful woman.
Thank you.
Stay with us.
Welcome back. We are talking about judgment this week. And in the last episode, we talked about judgment in the brain. But in this episode, I actually want to talk about judgment, why we have it, and how it actually can serve you. Because it's not all bad, or we wouldn't be able to do it, right? As a species, we have this ability to judge. So there's this side of judgment that is discernment. And then there's the part of judgment where it goes too far, like we talked about in the last episode, where it becomes destructive. Judgment for discernment is very different than judgment when it comes to being very harsh about an entire group of people. So judgment for discernment means, should I go that direction? That person over there, is that safe for me to go? You see a group of men and you're a woman and it's dark and it's an alley. Should I go that direction? That's discernment. There's a big difference there. And I also want to talk about one thing. So often women are taught, oh, don't be judgmental, be nice, be kind, be sweet, be polite. That's not always a good thing. So this idea that we shouldn't be judgmental at all, especially where discernment is involved, so often I want to throw this out there to you, and I'd love for you to answer this question. How many times did you not listen to that judgment, that voice inside your head that said, I should not do this, or I should do this thing? And you did or did not do that thing. You went against your internal judgment and it got you in trouble. So one thing I've taught my daughter since she was really young is listen to the voice inside. If it means you're not polite to someone that you think is a problem, then risk being impolite and apologize later if you have to. You don't need to go extreme, but listen to that voice inside if you're reading cues that say this isn't a good thing for me. I don't like the idea.
Which is a brain function.
Right. I don't like the idea
hemisphere function.
that we just throw judgment out the window, right? We have the ability to judge for a reason.
Well, so let me reinforce that because I actually really agree with you on this. I am actually, you and I together are going to be able to train the Newport Beach Police Department on brain health.
Right.
And as I was talking to the chief there, we were talking about killing the ants, the automatic negative thoughts. He made it clear to me they need to be suspicious in certain situations. And so if they're on the street, so the first thing is to protect the community. Mm-hmm. And so if they notice something that's different, that's not right, that's just off, that their first instinct is to be suspicious and to play out all the scenarios. Now, you have often criticized me as saying I have Mickey
and Minnie in your head doing the waltz. It's the happiest place on earth. And you are the least judgmental person I know.
Right. But I'm also, I spent 10 years on active duty in the Army. And so I understand the mind of a warfighter where they have to be cautious. And why do we call our podcast The Brain Warrior's Way? Because it's not Mickey and Minnie out there. You need to be armed, prepared, and aware to win the fight of your life, because quite frankly, and we've been beginning to talk about the evil ruler, it's dangerous with technology and food. And so having a healthy dose of suspicion.
Yes.
And you've never heard me say I'm a fan of positive thinking. I'm a fan of accurate thinking. And so judgment can be good or bad. And if you find yourself at the extremes, you have to ask yourself why. Could there be brain issues involved in that? But that doesn't mean you lose your anxiety, because in a large-scale study from Stanford, the don't worry, be happy people died the earliest from accidents and preventable illnesses.
Yeah, I agree with you. So I think the point is, when we talk about judgment, the question is this helpful in my life and in my family and to the people around me, or is it not? Because the type of judgment I'm talking about right now is the type of judgment that could save your life. And if you're wrong, it's okay. So be kind with yourself. But, as someone who was attacked at 15, I will never forget that I had the thought right before I was attacked, why, like, there's nothing, this is a big white guy in a suit. What's he going to do to me? He's not going to do anything to me. That was a poor judgment on my part. I wasn't suspicious of someone, even though all the signs were there. That was a dumb thought. So I will never again have that thought, or nor did I train my daughter to have those thoughts. You don't judge based on those societal cues that you're taught. You judge based on how is the person behaving, right?
That's actually why I don't wear a suit. So you don't connect me to that
but
criminal.
So I have that mindset of a police officer. I understand that being suspicious. I'm always looking over my shoulder ever since then.
Well, and it's interesting because sometimes we're suspicious and we don't know why, or we can't articulate why. And part of the neuroscience reason, it's sort of a conflict between the left side of your brain, which is the happy side of your brain that doesn't see problems, and it moves you toward situations. It's in conflict with the right side of your brain, which tends to see problems. And the right side also puts together lots of different components at once, but it doesn't have language. So it can't explain why you feel anxious in a situation. And so being able to connect the left and right sides of the brain is a very important skill, which is why you want to help your brain be healthy.
Well, and there's a really good book. I love this book. I've given it to so many young girls. It's called The Gift of Fear. And it's a really interesting book. He talks a lot about this topic and what we call intuition. And he talks a lot about how oftentimes that intuition you're feeling is that your brain processes way faster than you think it does. Faster than you can put together why you're scared. It took in so many details so quickly, you just don't really understand because it was too fast for you to really put it together. So that feels like intuition. It feels like a feeling when in fact, it was actually stuff that your brain took in quickly. So don't ignore it.
Well, and when we met with the police officer, he said that the average response time was 1.5 seconds.
To even register.
But when you get anxious, it can actually go up to 4 seconds.
4 seconds.
And that's what a lot of people in dangerous situations, they often freeze, especially if they're anxious.
But you brought up the Brain Warrior's Way. And that's one of the reasons I train, right? We train because you can decrease that reaction time by training. He said athletes, people, you can't decrease it completely, but you can decrease it down to just over a second by training regularly. The stress response time.
And that's what we want you to do. We want you to be armed, prepared, aware. We want you to train to be brain warriors. And I'm totally judgmental on this podcast when I think about the bad food that they serve at church, at work, at hospitals, to children. And I'm okay with that. And the front part of my brain doesn't work too hard. I'm just seeing what is happening in our society. And so judgment isn't necessarily good or bad, but you just want to ask yourself, does it serve you or does it in fact hurt you? And if you don't know how your brain works, you obviously can come to one of the 8 Amen clinics and we'd be happy to look and see it and work on balancing it with you. I hear you're getting a scan this week.
I am. I'm going to, 10 years later, I'm going to get a scan.
So this will be her 3rd scan, and
Yeah.
we'll see if it's continuing to be as beautiful as she is. Because, the question becomes, how do you know unless you look?
So the last thing I want to add about this, because when we're talking about judgment in different situations, if it's about people and it's not helpful, then the one thing I love is the work. We talk about the 4 questions, and it's so helpful. Byron Katie has these worksheets called Judge Your Neighbor worksheets. And it really helps you work through your judgment so that you end up in the end flipping it around to yourself. You go to the opposite. So that person's a jerk. Well, I'm a jerk. Yeah, I can be a jerk sometimes. It sort of instantly cracks that thought, right? I'm a jerk when I call that person a jerk, right? So it just cracks the thought and it eliminates that immediate pressure that you feel when you think those thoughts. And it's called Judge Your Neighbor worksheet. So if you're having thoughts that are not helpful to you, those worksheets can be very helpful.
And you can get those. You can actually download them for free at thework.com. And we talk about it in all of our books. There's a whole section on this in Feel Better Fast and Make It Last. All right. When we come back, we have a new segment we're going to roll out called Brain in the News, where we're going to go through important neuroscience, but practical neuroscience articles that came out in the last couple of weeks. If you want to enter the free drawing for Tana's cookbook, she'll sign it to you. It's amazing. We've been eating out of it more recently, which makes me so happy. But you can go to Apple Podcasts and leave a review for the Brain Warriors Way, or you can go to brainwarriorswaypodcast.com. If you leave a review or ask us a question, we will enter you into the book raffle. Stay with us. Hey, everybody, welcome back, and welcome to a new segment on the Brain Warriors Way podcast that we're going to do each week called Brain in the News, where we actually look at, what's happening in neuroscience that's new and interesting.
Lots.
And, every day it seems I'm sending our team an article I read, or they're sending me something. And so we're just going to go through a couple on this podcast because we want to keep you up to date on what's the latest science. And this article just came out. Before we do, if you get a big idea from this podcast, please post it and hashtag Brain Warriors Way.
Yeah, I have a feeling this one might be, we're going to get a lot of big ideas on this one.
We're going to get a lot of big ideas. So an article came out that basically said plant-based diets risk worsening brain health. And the article basically said exclusive plant-based diets are deficient in the neurotransmitter choline. And that's a problem.
That's not really new, but I think a lot of people don't know it. And so that's what people often ask, why we're not vegan and why we don't promote vegan. We promote like 70 to 80% plant-based diet with very high quality protein. No hormones, no antibiotics, grass-fed. And we support anyone who's vegan. We don't have a dog in the fight other than your brain health. So we want you to get tested. We want you to supplement, do the right things. But I actually asked one of my mentors, Dr. Mark Hyman, about this. I said, why is it that, because he believes the same thing we do, 70 to 80% plant-based with just a little bit of lean protein, clean protein, I should say. So I asked him about this. I said, why is it that people feel better when they start a plant-based diet and then they don't? He goes, well, that's exactly what happens. He reinforced that. He said, what happens is they were eating so awful and they felt so awful and they had so much inflammation that when they start eating clean initially, just the fact of getting that stuff out and eating plants decreases the inflammation and they feel better. It takes a while for the nutrient deficiency to kick in. So they don't end up correlating it to their diet because he goes, what I end up seeing is that a year to 2 years later, or sometimes 3 years later, they start to feel really awful, tired, fatigued, depressed, anxious. And that's what he starts to see, is that a few years later, it starts to get really bad. So initially they feel good, then they feel bad.
So let me read a little bit of this, because a lot of people maybe have not heard about choline. Mm-hmm. And choline is an essential nutrient, which means you have to get it from your diet. And it's critical to brain health, particularly during fetal development. It also influences the liver. The primary dietary sources of choline are beef, eggs, dairy products, fish, and chicken, with much lower levels found in nuts, beans, cruciferous vegetables such as broccoli.
You have to eat too much of it to get it.
In 1998, recognizing the importance, the U.S. Institute of Medicine recommended minimum daily intakes, 425 milligrams for women and 550 milligrams a day for men. So it's not an inconsequential amount. And so if you're on an exclusive plant-based diet, it's very hard for you to get choline. Choline is also heavily involved in memory and in learning. And
learning new
so we, huperzine A, for example, which is in brain and memory power boosts acetylcholine, which then goes to choline. So it's very important to have enough nutrients from your diet. Meat also has B vitamins, and B vitamins are critical for the function of virtually every cell in the body. Now, if somebody is vegetarian, and we treat many people and they're vegetarian for
religious or ethical
reasons or spiritual reasons, then it's important to supplement with things like choline and B vitamins.
So what I want to point out from this article is that you said something, and I don't want it to slip through, that it's especially critical during pregnancy. So, because we've seen an increase in kids with depression and anxiety. And wasn't there a study that showed that women who are vegan during pregnancy can have problems with children later if they're not supplementing?
There's all sorts of studies like that. But the one that came out recently, so another brain in the news, is women who had low omega-3 fatty acid levels had 5 times the level of depression. And those also can cognitively impact kids. Let's move on to another study. New blood tests could help identify veterans with PTSD. Although when I actually went and read this study, they were a little murky on exactly what tests
so it's
showed.
It's one of those little bit of shady.
It's, well, no, not shady, but what it said is if you had a mixture of methylation problems, so your body is not able to produce enough methyl groups, which is critical to drive so many things. If there were high inflammatory markers, if there was high insulin, that people were more likely to have a mental health issue. It's the whole point of the Brain Warriors Way, right? One of the important steps we always say is you have to know your important health numbers. And if they're not right, we want you to get them right.
And methylation you need for detoxing too, correct? For clearing your body of things that, and if you have a toxic brain, you don't feel good.
So looking for a blood test coming down the line, this news article is going to make you mad. My prediction, it's not a judgment, just my prediction. Mom's marijuana use impairs baby's memory into adolescence. So many pregnant women are turning to marijuana to help curb morning sickness during early pregnancy. A new study reports maternal marijuana use may be detrimental to the brain development of children. Exposure to THC in utero can cause learning and memory problems that may continue into adolescence. And let's just be honest, if they continue into adolescence, you're going to have them the rest of your life.
Well, because you missed so much important stuff during those critical years. Yeah, we talked about judgment in our last episode, so I think I'm going to be quiet.
Auburn University Harrison School of Pharmacy researchers found more and more expectant mothers are turning to marijuana. A recent report claiming that the number of women using marijuana during pregnancy has more than doubled in the last 15 years. And there's another study out of Pueblo, Colorado, that found a 1,700% increase in babies born exposed to marijuana. This is not a good trend. And, you know, you and I fight about this all the time. I think we should legalize marijuana and then tell people it's dangerous.
Because
you
we
think we
normalize
should
it.
throw them all in jail.
No, I don't. I actually don't. So let me clarify that. I think we should change the laws around it. I don't think we should legalize it because when we legalize it, we normalize it, and then kids think it's okay, and it's a whole vicious circle.
And that's certainly been happening.
Right.
Another fascinating study came out about do antidepressants that raise serotonin affect the gut's microbiome?
Oh.
And so we've actually talked about the 100 trillion soldiers you have in your gut that are helping you, the microbiome, the 100 trillion bacteria, virus, yeast, all sorts of characters. But they should be your soldiers to help you produce vitamins, detoxify your food, help you with digestion. They make neurotransmitters. A new study in mice led by UCLA biologists strongly suggests that serotonin and drugs that target serotonin, such as Prozac, Paxil, Zoloft, Effexor, Ptsd, can have a major effect on the gut's microbiome and actually decrease the production of serotonin. And you know, it's been my issue with many antidepressants. It's once you start them, they're so hard to stop.
Because they actually change the...
And we're both a fan of antidepressants for the right person. Sure. But we want you to do all the other things as well. Head-to-head against Prozac, exercise was shown to be equally effective. Head-to-head against Prozac, omega-3 fatty acids were actually found to be more effective. Learning how to not believe every stupid thing you thought. Meditation, making sure your thyroid is right. All of the Bright Minds risk factors that we talk about over and over. You want to make sure you're doing those things too. So if you need an antidepressant, you're going to need less of it for less period of time. So those are our articles for Brain in the News. We hope you like this segment. We're going to try to distribute it or do one each week. When we come back, we're going to answer your questions. And we love that because our goal is to grow the Brain Warrior community to 1 billion people in the next 25 years. That's our goal here at Amen Clinics and BrainMD.
So make sure you leave a review for us on Apple Podcast. And during the Q&A, you can also, or even now, you can go to brainwarriorwaypodcast.com, visit our review page, and leave a question there. You can leave a review there, and it will enter you into a raffle to win my cookbook, the Brain Warriors Way cookbook, and I'll sign it for you. Welcome back. In this episode, we are going to answer questions. So be sure to leave us more questions. We love to answer your questions. You can leave us a review on iTunes if you would so kindly do that. You can also go to our website and leave a question there. What you want to do is go to brainwarriorswaypodcast.com, go to the reviews page, and there are some instructions there. You can leave us a question. You can leave us a review, anything that's on your mind. We actually just want to hear from you. But we really do like answering your questions. So if you will go there, that would be great. And we are giving away my cookbook, the Brain Warriors Way cookbook, and I will sign it for you. And these are our recent winners. So our current winners are Matthew from Salt Lake, Utah, Holly from Noonan, Georgia, Catherine from Rolla, North Dakota. And Kathleen from Boise, Idaho.
Of listeners
I know.
From North Dakota.
Isn't that weird? What's going on in North Dakota? And Kathleen from Boise, Idaho.
Nothing, which is why they're listening to us.
So thanks to all of you for leaving questions. That was not nice. That was not nice.
I've been to North Dakota.
That was so not nice.
We are so grateful. And we are getting reviews. So I want to read some of them. Just wanted to say thank you. So this is from Sabrina from Ontario, Canada. Just wanted to say thank you for sharing your knowledge on brain health. I'm 27 and going through a PhD program, as well as fighting with my husband a lot. Since I've discovered your videos, podcast, and book, Feel Better Fast and Make It Last, I've been using your techniques to improve my mind. Your recommendation to listen to mood-enhancing songs like Claire de Lune, Debussy, has saved my husband and I from fighting in front of our baby. Thank you, and God bless you and Tana.
That's so cool.
One more from Koo Crew. You two complement each other so perfectly. I just found your podcast and have been furiously playing catch up. I can't get enough. Such important work you're doing, and I'm so grateful for it, as I'm sure anyone who follows you both would agree. Love to you both.
That's so awesome. Thank you so much.
All right, we're answering questions.
We do have fun. Okay. Let's see. I like this question. So my most pressing concern is putting my brain in the best nutritional and healing environment after a life of poor decisions, along with 22 automobile accidents and playing football. Yes, this is why I'm reading this. And playing football as a teenager. I've lost 75 pounds going from 275 to 200.
Congratulations.
Yes. And eat as clean a diet as I can afford. Any suggestions? Yes, lots of them. We have lots of suggestions.
Keep doing what you're doing. One,
Yes.
I mean, the most important part of getting well is mindset. If you don't have your mindset right, it's never going to work.
Right. So we go with this acronym, MASTERY, and it's the M in MASTERY is mindset, and then assessment. You should also possibly assess your number. Go to our website and take the brain health assessment.
Brain health assessment, know your brain type, your brain strengths,
Right.
your brain's vulnerabilities. Also on Brain Fit Life, we have a section on know your important numbers. You can actually plug in your lab test.
You want to do
and
that.
it'll tell you if it's healthy, and if it's not healthy, what are some simple strategies to do.
And we
for
go
you.
through each of those nutrients to tell you what they help with. So if they're low, you could be in trouble. Like simple things like vitamin D and fish oil and stuff like that can be really helpful. S is sustenance, which it looks like you're doing a good job of losing weight. You're now going to be entered into the raffle to get the Brain Warriors Way cookbook, which is full of simple recipes. So hopefully that will help you.
So he said, I'm eating as healthy as I can afford.
Right.
And so do you have any tips on less expensive ways?
I do. So, and that's one thing I love about the Brain Warriors Way cookbook. I put a ton of energy into that to help people with money and time. So there's a ton of tips right in that book on how to save money, how to do things. So like even the soups, like how do you make use of what's left over in your refrigerator before they go bad? The Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15, it's got the websites.
So just so people know about that.
Right.
The Dirty Dozen and it comes from the Environmental Working Group, EWG.org. It's those foods that just quite frankly, you should not eat if they're not organic.
Right.
And the Clean 15 is these are foods that buying organic is not as important.
So things like maybe an orange or a banana that has a thick peel on it might not be quite as critical. Berries are very critical. So if you go to EWG.org, that will give you the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. They update it. They tell you which are the most pesticide-laden. Seafoodwatch.org is another one that tells you the best seafood.
And they have their own app.
Right. So there's lots of tips in the cookbook. So you're going to be entered into that drawing. And you can also go to my website, and a lot of that information is on my websites, in my blogs. Those are all on my website, TanaAmen.com. So congratulations. You're doing great.
There's so many great resources at TanaAmen.com.
And they're
from
free.
Videos to
Meal planning.
your recipes to meal planning. That's really great.
And actually, one of the tips, let me just point this out, because for someone on a budget, it is really helpful. There's recipes on there, and along with the recipes are the meal planner, which actually tells you exactly how much of each ingredient you need so you don't over purchase. So that's really helpful.
So I really like this question. And this comes from Mark. Actually, has two questions. I'm curious about your brain health recommendations, specifically for salespeople and entrepreneurs. People in these roles, in many cases, are operating out of high stress on a daily basis due to their responsibility. I'm the CEO. Salespeople are constantly facing rejection and battling mental wars, and this would seem to be very tough on the brain with cortisol levels being so high. Yes, I have lots. So one, you want to know your brain type. Salespeople are often brain type 2. They're outgoing, they're spontaneous, they're gregarious, they might struggle with paperwork. And so optimizing the front part of their brain can be really helpful. And if they have ADD, very common in salespeople, get it treated can be really important.
Things like meditation, exercise for sure, because that will help to relieve stress. But meditation can be, just a 5-minute meditation can be so helpful.
We actually have a supplement that I developed specifically for people who have chronic stress called Everyday Stress Relief that has Relora, which helps to block cortisol, and holy basil, which has been shown to
really
be
good.
calming. So the right supplements, know your brain type, do, as you said, the brain healthy strategies, and you're going to have to stop taking people out for alcohol. I know it's like if I get 2 or 3 drinks in them, they're more likely to sign the order for me. But
that actually interrupts sleep. So, and sleep is critical if you're trying to decrease cortisol, and too much alcohol interrupts sleep.
So one more question. Do you want to read this one?
Sure. So I like this one. What would you suggest to help with the social media blues? Per se, when viewing family posts that can be hurtful, not mean, just not posting times with you, although posting them with other family members. I do not get on much for the browsing or every time there is a notification. I started using social media for the groups and interests I have, although there are times when the feed will pull those posts that can be hard to dismiss quickly and emotionally. Is there a natural way to prepare my brain and emotions prior to even getting on social media to check for those interests I have? I know this may be a silly question, although I thought I would ask, as I seem to have come across these occurrences more frequently in the past months. It's not silly at all, Deborah. I actually think it's a great question because depression has gone up so much, depression and anxiety, especially with younger people, because they're constantly comparing their lives to what's going on social media. And what you're describing here, in a sense, is the same thing. She's describing not being included. So
I just had an epiphany that, the holidays are hard. Mm-hmm. And often it's because you have to spend time with people that stress you out.
You talk about this a lot.
Right? I mean, the holidays are hard and they're coming up. It's hard to believe because it just seemed like they were here. But imagine if that's true, and I'm one of 7, and Tana will tell you, I come from a reasonably normal family.
No, they're a wonderful family. You come from let's just compare them to mine.
But I'm still hearing stories that happened 60 years ago, right? And they tell the same stories over. I'm like, can't you come up with a different story for, when I had a raccoon, when I was a teenager, and the raccoon,
was terrible. He was a terror.
She was awesome.
You thought it was a he, and he was a terrorist.
She would poop sometimes in your shoes, and yes, she ate.
She ate your sister's fish.
My sister's goldfish.
Yes, and she tore up your mother's bathroom. Yeah,
but she was awesome. But it's like 55 years later, I'm still hearing the same stupid story. So here's the epiphany: that with social media now, it's like you have the holidays
24/7, yeah.
24/7. If you felt excluded as a child, I mean, I talk about this, I was the second son in a Lebanese family out of 7 children, which meant I was pretty much invisible. And, when you're second, it sucks when you're second, right? I'm so grateful I was second because I didn't have to go in the grocery business, right? And my brother does that and he loves it and it's all good. But it's like those negative feelings you have in your family that you can never get away from, where without social media or before social media, you only had to steel yourself or gird yourself a couple of times a year.
So I actually very much can relate to this. I really appreciate what you're saying. And here's one thing I do. I actually don't go on there for personal reasons at all. I go on to post for business. I go on to answer questions for business. I absolutely do not go on personal social media, except once in a while when someone tells me they posted something they want me to see. I'll go look at that one thing. I don't go on there. It's just too much of an energy drain. So I just don't do it. And that's very helpful to me.
Because it's often not for your small group.
No, it's just a ton of other
your
stuff.
Small group and all of their groups, which then
and your brain. And here's the thing:
the less time, the better.
And here's the thing: you're sitting at home, which gives your brain too much time to read stuff into a post that they didn't mean. So they're just posting quickly. They're posting stuff they might not have even meant to hurt your feelings. It might have just been something that was, on their mind. But because you're at home, it's only natural. You're going to look at that and read it and go, why wasn't I part of that? And then your brain begins to spin on that. And that's why depression and anxiety has gone up. So, my suggestion is the less, the better.
There you have it. And I'm not going to say from the horse's mouth because that will get me into trouble. So thank you. And go on, Brain Warriors Way podcast.com and ask us more questions. We love everybody who asks us a question is going to get a free book signed by Tana. We'd also love you to go to Apple Podcast and leave a review or leave a review on brainwarriorswaypodcast.com.
If you're enjoying the Brain Warriors Way podcast, please don't forget to subscribe so you'll always know when there's a new episode. And while you're at it, feel free to give us a review or 5-star rating, as that helps others find the podcast.
If you're considering coming to Amen clinics or trying some of the brain healthy supplements from BrainMD, you can use the code podcast10 to get a 10% discount on a full evaluation at amenclinics.com or a 10% discount on all supplements at brainmdhealth.com. For more information, give us a call at 855 978 1363.